Talk to us about the doco then. What's the idea?
So, yeah, David Frost Versus is a 6-part series, which I have to admit I've been working on basically since Dad died a decade ago, but really focused for the last 2 years with Sky Studios, where, rather than just a one-off on Dad, I felt we had this unique position with Dad's archive of over 10,000 interviews, where we could re-explore key moments of our recent history through his unique archive. Moments where he had a particularly unique front row seat to history. And the remaining 3 episodes, in reverse order, David Frost versus the Middle East. He interviewed everyone in that conflict for 50 years. David Frost versus Elton John. He had a very close friendship with Elton and 10 interviews on screen with him, which we can reflect on going through the process. And David Frost versus Richard Nixon, which I think everyone knows he had a pretty close relationship with.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued by how it has been to do this documentary, like you say, almost like kind of 10 years in the making about your own dad as a journalist yourself. But it feels like maybe we should hear a bit of it first, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So we've picked a couple of clips just from the Nixon episode. And I think everyone is aware how the process unfolds. So many people are aware how the process unfolded. Dad gambled it all to get this interview, outbid the networks. It cost him $600,000 to pay Nixon his fee. Inflation adjusted, that's $2 million today just to do the interview. And it didn't start that well. The first half of the recording sessions, he didn't get that much out of Nixon. This clip that we've picked is the first moment where it kind of starts to turn for Dad. And he gets a line from Nixon that really became part of history, still resonates today, not just because of what he got from Nixon, but the kind of implications today. And this is from that interview.
In the Houston plan, it's stated very clearly, use of this technique is clearly illegal. It amounts to burglary. Why did you approve a plan that included an element like that was clearly illegal?
Yes, well, burglary is the word, but another way to put it is that you get the information that you need. There are some actions that have to be covert. By covert, let me put it this way.
Or in this case, illegal.
That's right. Well, let me say that it is legal, in my view.
So what, in a sense, you're saying is that there are certain situations, and the Houston plan, or that part of it was one of them, where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something, and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
That's extraordinary. Like, just watching it, even though it's, like you say, it's kind of familiar, it's quite extraordinary to see that moment.
It really is, and I've seen that moment many, many times, and it's still striking to watch it back. What I love about this episode is that, the Frost-Nixon movie of 2008 was absolutely fantastic, and Ron Howard and the team did a wonderful job bringing it to life. I think, and maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think our episode is even more dramatic than the dramatisation because we go back to the actual footage, but with the love and the attention and the budget that we've been lucky enough to have with Sky's team to make this document. Obviously we do a job similar to this every day, and watching the raw footage to me it's just electric. Yeah,
because there was another moment that you picked as well, right?
Yes. So this moment has actually never been seen. And
I love it. A little Pole Hub exclusive.
A little Pole Hub exclusive. No, very much so.
We'll take it.
After that clip, the interesting thing, the clip we just watched was actually relating to the Houston plan, not Watergate. So it's the first moment Dad started to get some serious mileage from the interview, but he needed more. He needed to get an apology on Watergate, and I think those that know the story, I don't think I'm spoiling the story here, know that he ultimately did. Now, what people haven't seen is that the following day after this, absolutely mammoth 28-hour recording session, Nixon came back and they sat down to do some sort of pick-up shots and other promo things. And in that moment, Dad, for whatever reasons, decided to offer him a chance to give a further apology or a further reflective answer on all that had kind of unfolded. For whatever reason, Dad didn't use that clip. He just relied on the actual raw moments that had unfolded in the days before. And so this clip hasn't been seen with that in mind, but I think it's very relevant and important. And this is ultimately one of the last exchanges between David Frost and Richard Nixon in those famous 28-hour interviews in 1977.
Why don't I let you end this program by just gazing into that camera there and saying whatever you want to about Watergate to the American people?
I think perhaps my greatest regrets about Watergate are that it tended to reduce respect for the office of the presidency. I know a lot of people have felt that when I mentioned that I was trying to protect the office of the presidency and so forth and so on, and that was just protecting myself. Well, think what you like, but it's terribly important that whoever's in that office have the respect of his fellow men. The office deserves respect. And anybody who is in that office who does something which reduces respect for the offices makes America a little weaker, a little less admirable, and most important, less able to be the leader of the free world, which it must be if freedom is to survive.
As well as picking episodes that we felt that Dad had a particularly unique front row seat to, we also tried to pick things that would feel relevant and resonate today. The Nixon episode was one we were always going to do, if I'm honest, and I kind of couldn't believe as we were making it how much events came back to us to make it more relevant. The odd thing, of course, about it is 75%, 80% of the episode feels relevant because of the first clip that we played. The final 20% is almost the polar opposite. You do have someone that obviously has acknowledged wrongdoing and apologised. And in that sense, this episode is just very powerful because for 80%, you're like, wow, is this today? Yeah. And then at the end, you're like, no, it's not.
I'm sure the panel are going to have thoughts on those parallels. But just before we talk to them, I am so intrigued by the process of doing this documentary series about your dad. And it's almost weird for me, like, hearing you call him your dad throughout, because, like, to me, he's like some legend from TV, right? And I guess what I wonder is, with children have different ways of relating to their parents, particularly if their parents are, big deals, right? They're either sort of slightly idolised, or you have that like Mickey-taking relationship. Like, what was it like with you?
Well, both of those things. We had a very playful relationship with our dad, my brothers and I. I mean, Dad, what I think is interesting to people, was not a star at home, and he wasn't grand or big for his boots. He was a kid with us. He was a child with us, right up until he died when I was sort of 28. We had a very jokey, relaxed relationship at home. And one of the regrets I do have is that, particularly later in life, I didn't humour him and ask at length about all these achievements. But that's because he didn't impose them on us. He asked us about ourselves, which I think is one of his tricks, why he's so good at interview. He's genuinely interested in other people.
The curiosity.
And I think that, when somebody does go, you reflect on some of those things you didn't do. I don't feel bad about it because I know how much he knew that we loved him and respected him. But you kind of think you've got all the time in the world with your dad until you suddenly don't.
Yeah.
And in a small way, this is me playing catch up on all of that, this project. And I've watched more hours of Dad's interviews than I can count. It's been a joy. It's been an absolute joy.
What's it like as a journalist and an interviewer to have, someone as famous and renowned as your dad, I guess, leading the way on it?
Well, I didn't start in this profession because I didn't think it was possible. So in that sense, I went into finance initially. Maybe the pressure came a bit later.
Yeah.
I was nervous before I started, for sure. I thought I'd get a lot of grief and criticism.
Why grief and criticism?
Well, I think people will assume you're a Nepo baby and only because of your surname. I guess we're live every day, so you have to sink or swim, which at least offsets that a little bit. But you know what? I think because people loved and respected my dad so much, I don't think I've got much grief. I think people, which I'm so lucky in life on, have given me love and respect because they all adored Dad. And, you know, occasionally, if someone wants to do that, you know, I say fantastic, because it just reminds me of this man I absolutely adored. And look, like you said at the top, I don't for a second think I can get anywhere close to what he achieved. And I don't want people to bring him down in any way, because it's this like goat up there that I can always just work as hard as I can to try and get closer to.
I mean, it comes across on, like, with the, you know, the way you talk about him, but also the obvious labour of love that's been the documentary series as well. Thank you for coming on and sharing it with us.
My pleasure.
There is something quite amazing about the art of the political interview. I mean, you guys have been on the other side of it, I guess.
I mean, absolutely. But I just have to say, watching the clips and just listening to you talk about your dad, not only can your obvious affection, love, respect for your dad just is so clear, and that is so wonderful to hear. But also, those clips were just sensational.
It is sensational.
I mean,
true.
you must be. You have to be so proud of what you've achieved, obviously, but what you've achieved in bringing this together. I can't wait to watch it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you were I heard you. This is the great thing about having the panel here, because I can hear all their reactions, like when we play the clips. And I heard you, you know, like reacting to the parallels with today, right?
Yeah, those comments from Nixon, I mean, come on, if they're so poignant for what we are going through right now, the understanding, not actually, by the way, for the office of the President of the United States, but one of the things I keep talking about is do people understand the office that they are holding, the privilege of that and the responsibility that goes with that. And I think there's been such an undermining of public life and public office and the way in which people behave, the language that's used, the behaviour that people think is acceptable, that actually this is a really great reminder for so many politicians, and particularly for the President of the United States. But I also think, I mean, echoing what John has just said, the most wonderful praise that you have is praise from your adult children. You know, people can say whatever they want about you, but it takes one of my kids to tell me something was great, Mom, and that's it. You're walking on air for days.
And it's good because it doesn't happen very often, right? It means something. Thanks both very much, and thanks for coming on the programme.
Thanks for having me.